What is going on, everybody? Thank you all so much for tuning into this live stream interview here on Mikasa Sukasa. Of course, as always, I am your humble host, Niko House. Today, I am here with the kings of Illinois, progressive independent media, Hard Lens Media, with Kit and Paul. What's going on, gentlemen? How are you doing?
We're doing good. We're still recovering from yesterday's debacle.
Yeah, I can believe it. Now, I contacted you to come onto the show because I was looking at the map, but like a few days ago. And this is actually right after the first Super Tuesday, and I was like, okay, what we have coming up, and I saw Illinois was on the map, and I recall there being a considerable amount of delegates in Illinois, and I've also recalled plenty of our conversations personally about the rampant corruption in Chicago specifically, which Bernie would absolutely need to win. But it seems like no one wants to address it or talk about it except for Hard Lens Media. So I would love to know what your thoughts are on the possibility of Bernie coming away with those 200 plus delegates, or, however much it would take for him to win, considering, all the factors that we've discussed in the past and what we've been seeing coming into fruition for this election.
Paul, you want to take it away?
Yeah, well, so you're right. It's not a winner-take-all state. None of them are for the Democratic primary, so he's not getting all of them. There's almost no way. But there is rampant corruption that runs throughout, particularly Chicago and a lot of Illinois, all the way down to Springfield, which is where our capital is, obviously. Dr. Laura Chamberlain is someone who we've interviewed a lot with regard to election fraud, and I think that's something that I'm seeing evidence of throughout many of the states in this primary election, something we saw in many states in 2016, and I expect to see it again here in Illinois. So in 2016, we saw evidence of, so there's a law in Illinois that says if the vote totals are outside the margin of error, right? So the exit polls are outside the margin of error, there's an automatic recount of a certain number of votes. And it turned out that in 2016, they were erasing the recount totals to match the machine count totals. Wow. And the independent election monitors who were there to say, hey, look, they're not doing that. They were not allowed to bring cameras in. They were shooed out of the room, even though it was supposed to be publicly observable. And ultimately, they found out that the people who were doing the recounts were employees of the company that made the machines in the first place. And so it's like, okay, how do you instill any amount of confidence in this election when this is how we're handling the recount when we're outside the margin of error? Unbelievable.
So even in 2016, you believe that there's a good chance that Bernie actually won Chicago?
I do.
Because of how outside of the margin of error it was.
Say again?
So because of how far out of the margin of error, very similar to what we've seen in Massachusetts, Texas, California, like it looks like Bernie actually won Chicago. Do you remember how large the margin of error was? What the difference was from the exit polling?
Oh, I don't off the top of my head. It's been a while.
Was it like more than 4 or 5%?
I think it was close to 6 to 8%.
Oh my God!
But there's more to this. So here's something I've noticed, and this was in 2016. My career as being an activist and an organizer is very minimal compared to what you have done and Fiorella and Craig. In 2016, I'm very confident that Bernie Sanders did at least was the winner. However, there was a problem. That is, Bill Clinton, not once, not twice, but on election day, visited 3 polling stations. And because he's the president of the United States, Secret Service was around, obviously people couldn't get close to him, and it was a big photo op. However, that is illegal to do. And people were saying that on social media. So he, just being an average citizen, just starting off in radio, starting off in activism, I called the Cook County Elections Office. And their response was, well, he's allowed to do that. That's okay. I mean, there's no problem, even though it is illegal.
Well, I say that's illegal. There is a problem because it's illegal.
Yeah. And again, so I was kind of taken aback, but I remember my family saying, well, this is Cook County. That's how it always is. So I then called the state offices. And they said to me, you are like our 200th caller. We're getting calls from Florida saying the exact same thing, that this is illegal, what's happening. So there are people outside the state of Illinois even calling in on our behalf saying what Bill Clinton is doing is illegal.
Yeah, because it was the same day. I think their primaries were the same day.
Yes, but we had obviously activists, noticing what Bill Clinton was doing in our state, and it was wrong. It was a wrong thing to do, but this was also the point of when Rahm Emanuel was still in office, and a lot of people were just still, I think, enthralled with the fact that Clinton was running, and because of the Illinois machine, because of how it's so deeply entrenched in our entire systems here in our state, no one was batting an eye to it. And for 2020, there's 225 delegates that are now up for grabs. And I'm very confident enough to say that if Bernie Sanders isn't going to fight for election integrity or call out election fraud, this state will go to the Democratic front runner. And the only way we can make sure that this doesn't happen is if people are aware and we fight for election integrity. But seeing as how this fight is going right now, I hate being the bearer of bad news, it's not going to look good in this state. We have a long, sad history of corruption. Myself, Daniel Lupker, Paul DuPont, since 2017, since Harlan's Media got started, we have been covering a lot of municipal, state elections, county elections, and throughout the board, I mean, everyone's saying the same thing. Like, look, we got to struggle to make sure that our name is on the ballot. We got to struggle to make sure that voters will actually get the chance to vote for us so that we can make it on the debate stage. Take, for example, different subject altogether. And I don't know how it is in Florida, but if you're a Democrat or Republican, you're running for office in the state of Illinois, you need about 2,000 to 5,000 signatures to secure yourself on the ballot. Of course, they're not going to be challenged because it's Democrats and Republican, two-party system. But let's say you were Green Party, Libertarian, Independent, not affiliated, Socialist, whatever. You would at least need 25,000 signatures and plus an additional 25,000 just to make sure you are secure to be on the ballot, just so that you could possibly, maybe, dare I say it, be on a debate stage, because those signatures will disappear or they'll be challenged, because that's how it's done in this state, unfortunately. And it's a crisis. And to the Bernie Sanders surrogates and to Bernie Sanders himself, and even Tulsi Gabbard in her campaign, since he still is in the race too, if you want to be acknowledged, you're going to have to fight for election integrity. Otherwise, this state will go to Biden. And I hate saying that to your viewers and subscribers, but you got to fight. And now, look, I'm a little bit upset about how last night turned out, but we got to keep on fighting and fighting and fighting, because obviously right now there's very few people that are taking up the challenge.
I think that you both make very salient points, because I think that people are getting demoralized because they're under the impression that Bernie's message isn't good enough. His policies aren't good enough. And like at a certain point, you have to look at, dare I say, after the massive disappointment from last night, but you have to look at the math. There is overwhelming support in both parties for Medicare for all, single payer health care. Bernie Sanders himself has raised he raised $46 million last month, like in the losing effort, really. And he did so, he has well over a million now, unique and individual donors, million plus volunteers making tens of millions of phone calls. I think in California, they made 30 million phone calls in like less than a week or something like that. It was insane. When you look at the energy, the crowd turnouts, the numbers, just the raw numbers, what we know from history, that means victory. Like that's what it's supposed to mean. That's what it's always translated to. When you're looking at a record number of new registrations into the Democratic Party, which are seemingly uniquely attached to this person, right? And then those people get purged. But when you're looking at that record number of registrations, but then a record low turnout, like you gotta stop rolling over and playing dead and saying, well, I guess it just wasn't our policies. It just wasn't our time because our policies weren't good enough, or we just didn't fight hard enough. So I guess we just better fight harder next time. No, that's not it. It's not it. But the establishment, in my humble opinion, are hoping that you say that, because that means that you will play the game that they're playing the way that they tell you to play it, which will unequivocally mean failure again and again and again by the end of this election and any election in the future. So on the topic of election integrity, we did not see the result that we would have liked to see, last night or on Super Tuesday. What do you feel that's attributed to? Do you feel as if perhaps, it's election integrity, Joe Biden is on a legitimate surge? Bernie Sanders may have, made some missteps politically, or perhaps all of the above. I don't know.
I don't know if the latter point really holds, but I think the first two do. I think the Democratic establishment coalescing around Joe Biden on the day before Super Tuesday certainly had an effect. Mm-hmm. But I think there probably is some election fraud going on. And I wanted to talk a little bit about the point that you made, that the exit polls are showing that Medicare for All is enjoying overwhelming support in every state among Democratic voters, regardless of if they voted for Joe Biden or Bernie Sanders. And that's really good to know that the policies are winning out, but something we should take into account. Edison Research is a company that does exit polling results that end up getting reported by mainstream outlets like CNN. Edison polling, starting this year, is adjusting the exit poll results to match the machine vote count.
Hold on, double back. When did that start?
That started this election cycle. So there is now only one research group that is giving raw exit poll results, and that's TDMS Research, tdmsresearch.com. Mm-hmm. Now, it's a small group, and they tend to have a few days lag before they can actually get their results out. But when you see all of these breakdowns of like, oh, the voters like this, and it was this age group, and it was that, that's all nice to know. But that's residual data, right? It's not the real purpose of an exit poll result. It's like they're trying to convince voters that the purpose of an exit poll is to get demographic breakdowns of the voting.
How do you know that Edison is manipulating their results for the exit polls to match the machines?
I got this information. So this is something Lee Camp reported on. I'd have to look at his sourcing.
Well, if Lee said it, if Lee said it, that means he verified it multiple times over. Wow. That's insane. That is. Go ahead, Kate.
Well, there's something else I would like to add, and that is, when we saw Biden surge, Kyle Kalinske brought it up. The only way they could beat Bernie was by uniting around somebody that had name recognition, and that somebody that could unite all the centrists. And yeah, perception drives reality. As soon as they dropped out and said, "Hey, Joe's our guy," I guess a lot of people in the media and those within the establishment just said, "Okay, these are our marching orders. We're going to surround by Joe Biden," all while ignoring the fact that he has some clear cognitive issues. There's something wrong with Biden. Again, I'm not a medical expert, but when you're getting in a verbal shouting match and then swearing at a potential voter and then poking at him and then telling your aide to be quiet, as well as numerous other gaffes and missteps, this is open territory for somebody like Trump to take advantage of. And if Trump doesn't even use it, then he's a fool, because he has a treasure trove of videos and so much other content to use for campaign attack ads. But I think at this point, the establishment is just turning a blind eye, assuming that people will fall in line because, everyone has Trump derangement syndrome. But that's not going to work. I mean, yes, Trump is a bad person, but the system was messed up long before Trump got into office. And another thing, too, I guess Bernie Sanders did make a misstep, because perhaps his campaign and he himself just assumed that it was going to be a crowded field all the way up to the convention. And if it remained that way, theoretically, on Super Tuesday and even yesterday, Bernie Sanders would have been ahead of all of them, because the centrists would be dividing their votes. I mean, this is a possibility. Can we prove it? Well, look at Iowa, New Hampshire, Nevada, and even South Carolina to some extent. But now Bernie has to make this is what he has to do. He has to stop calling Joe his friend. He has to stop playing it nice, because he's fighting for a policy for Medicare for all that's universally popular, that people are voting for. He's fighting for student debt forgiveness. He's addressing climate change. These are things that he cares about. If he really cares about it, he's going to have to not only call out the establishment, but call out Joe and his hypocrisy. Because if you keep calling him your friend and then also saying that, yeah, I'll support whoever the nominee is, your message will die.
Yeah.
And if you're not going to fight for your message, if you're not going to fight for all the people that are still in this fight right now, and if you're not going to call out the very fact that there is election fraud happening, well, good luck for the 2022 midterm election cycle.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Bernie is in danger of not only losing 2020, but then losing all the seats that they gained in 2018. And then, of course, maybe any that they might gain in 2020. I think that, not like AOC, I don't believe is in danger, right? But whoever Elon's opponent, Elon might be in danger. Rashida Tlaib might be in danger. All the people who are kind of associated directly or loosely with Bernie Sanders' message are all in legitimate danger of losing their seats. The Senate is not going to be flipped. Even if you are going for the Democrats, the Senate's not going to be flipped. I want to let people know something, and I'm going to get the exact numbers on this because I'm going to do a separate video on this, but you know that the blue no matter who strategy is not a winning strategy. Like mathematically, if every single if every single Democrat voted for Biden, guess what? They would be millions, not a couple 100,000, millions of votes short from beating Donald Trump. And that's what people don't understand. This blue no matter who messaging, this idea that, oh, well, we can beat Trump if every Bernie supporter who's a blue dog Democrat or a Democrat votes for whoever he suggests. No, that's not the case. That's what people are not understanding. There is the reality now that the independents, they already outnumbered the Democratic Party, but the independents are now outnumbering the Republican Party. So if you are not catering to those independents, if you are not reaching out to those independents, if you're not introducing policies that appeal, because the country is not monolithic in their ideology. I don't know why people think that. We're a lot more flexible than what people want to admit. Medicare for All has universal popularity. UBI had universal popularity. If you would have told me 4 years ago that UBI would be popular amongst conservatives, I'd have been like, you'd have lost your mind. But 44% of Yang's voters said that they would vote for Trump if he wasn't the nominee, and he was running exclusively on UBI. We have moved the Overton window in such a way that caters to independents because you need them. And for some reason, the Democratic Party has decided that we're just going to keep the Democrats and the people who align themselves with that party, and like they're going to keep them in the wheel and have them running like a hamster. Like you actually have a chance to beat Trump with Joe Biden. What the are they trying to win? Are they trying to lose, gentlemen?
It seems like there are. It seems like they're totally fine with losing to Trump again, because I don't see anything when it comes to how we deal with the banks or how we deal with pharmaceutical companies or how healthcare gets handled in this country or how the military industrial complex grows year after year. I don't see how any of that fundamentally changes, even if you elect Biden over Trump. None of it changes. Worse. And in fact, the blue no matter who strategy, as effective as it is for some people, I don't know why people don't take a step back and realize that at its core, it is fundamentally a voter shaming tactic, right? Yeah, how dare you not support this candidate who offers you nothing that you want and in fact will regress everything? Don't you understand that the orange man is bad? How dare you? It's just straight voter shaming. I don't have to offer you anything. I just have to shame you into submission.
Right.
Why is that good?
And there's another issue too, and that is, and I can't believe I forgot about this, but the treatment of the voter, especially in this primary. Notice how difficult it is for voters to actually vote. For example, you have people waiting in long lines, polling stations being shut down on Super Tuesday. 2 examples in the state of Texas and the state of California. Polling stations were shut down. There were long lines, and the aftermath is that there's now a recount happening in Texas. And in California, 553,000 possible provisional ballots are going to be gone. Plus, add on to the fact that there's 800,000 potential votes that could disappear in LA alone, and we're still not done counting in the state of California. 94%, but there's still 106 delegates that have yet been allocated to either Bernie or Biden. And this is a concern because what happened yesterday? The same thing. All of a sudden, polling stations are shut down, long lines in the state of Michigan alone. You have people waiting
specifically in the college towns where Bernie would dominate. Yeah, absolutely.
So something is amiss. Something is not right. And you have to fight for election integrity. And look, my co-hosts, Daniel and Paul, have brought this up numerous times, and that is, you have to fight for election integrity. Bernie Sanders has to fight for this. He has to fight for this. And, Nina Turner, you're going to have to be more vocal about this because it is being taken from you. And if you just decide to fall in line and just say, okay, we got to beat Trump, that's not going to solve the problem. Because let's say hypothetically Biden wins and you have a Biden presidency. There is a risk, and that is you leave the door open for somebody worse than Trump to get into office, somebody more competent than Trump to get into office, to do way more terrible things and still get away with it because Trump got into office because he was speaking to a group of people that have lost everything. Across the board in the United States, we have an opioid crisis. There's a lack of jobs. You have people working 2 or 3 jobs just to make ends meet. My co-host Daniel did a story on how you got a couple in Kentucky going to jail because of unpaid medical bills. Wow, those are first-class A criminals. Wow, good thing the law is just telling them to go away. Then you have people who have ridiculous student debt. And student debt will follow you even after you die. So whoever co-signed that loan will guess what? They're going to inherit that debt because that debt will not die. Climate change is a reality. Bernie is going to have to fight on this. And I know Bernie says that Joe's a good friend, but there's something wrong with Joe. And same thing for Tulsi Gabbard, who's in the race, because I'm going to acknowledge it. Yes, she is in the race. Could she win the nomination?
Very outside chance.
Very outside chance.
Absolutely in this race.
Yes, and she herself is going to have to say something because something is not right. And to the most diehard Bernie Sanders supporters, and listen, I'm even going to include all these other candidates too, diehard Warren supporters, Pete Buttigieg supporters, Klobuchar supporters, Tulsi Gabbard supporters, Andrew Yang supporters. There's no way you can look me straight in the eye and say that Joe Biden did a fantastic job in all those other debates. You're not going to acknowledge that something wasn't wrong, that he couldn't put together a coherent sentence, that he was struggling. All those other candidates, including all those that decided to rally around Biden, they all noticed it, and something is wrong. And you know what? They could do a toe-to-toe match against Trump. I'm just gonna go that far. But Biden?
Yeah.
Are we being serious here? And the DNC is willing to commit election fraud just so that he could be their front guy.
What bothers me, just on a personal level, just like observing how Bernie reacts to Trump, for example. He calls him a racist. He calls him a demagogue, says he's the most dangerous president in modern history, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Which, by the way, it's some of what he says is a little bit hyperbolic, way more hyperbolic. And to be honest with you, I get a little bit disappointed with Bernie because completely and totally ad hominem. And okay, cool. If you want to do that, then why aren't you being consistent across the board? Because Trump has his issues, but if we're looking at, for example, the 94 crime bill, but Biden not only, coined the term the Biden crime bill, he fought for it harder than anybody else, but he won't even apologize for it. On top of that, you have the other side, which is Trump, who introduced the First Step Act. Is it perfect? Does it completely revamp the criminal justice system? No. Did he make it easier to throw us in jail? No, he did not. He, in fact, gave us an opportunity to get out. So, and he worked, by the way, with people like Tulsi Gabbard and other Democrats to get that legislation passed. With Biden, during the Obama administration, they said they were going to get out of Afghanistan. We literally got Osama. Wasn't in Afghanistan. That's a different discussion for a different day. But we got Osama. That was the reason why we were there. Well into Trump's presidency, where we're still there, Trump can now brag that he ended the war in Afghanistan. People should really
theoretically,
theoretically, unless something crazy goes down, he effectively ended the war in Afghanistan, and he's going to brag about that. But like, the reality of the situation is, when you're looking at Ukraine Gate, there's only one person, the only one presidential candidate, quote unquote, who is threatened to withhold aid from the Ukraine, and got him on video doing it, and that was Joe Biden. And for Bernie to constantly and continuously call Joe Biden his friend, and he's a segregationist. He is a literal segregationist.
He was on the wrong side of the civil rights movement, but yet somehow he got arrested with Nelson Mandela. Somehow somebody figured that out.
Yeah,
I don't even know how that even happened.
And with all that being said, Trump's the racist. Even if I granted you that Biden's a segregationist, but you can call Biden your friend. Biden is absolutely a demagogue. And he gaslights just as much, if not more than, I don't know if anybody gaslights more than Trump, but like, when you just do the side-by-side comparison, it basically makes it look like, oh, you're okay with racism, you're okay with neoliberalism and neoconservatism, you're even okay with I don't want to say a pro-war message, but at least the complacency of being in constant regular regime change and proxy wars. You're okay with it as long as it's a Democrat. And in my opinion, that has hurt him more than the election integrity too. But I do feel like there are instances where he could have won over a lot more voters, right? Because the exit polling is off, but you would have, in my opinion, done much better to even overcome some of the election rigging if you would stop being a good Democrat and be the revolutionary outsider that attracted so many people in your campaign in 2016. What do you think about that?
I take a different tack than both Daniel and Kit do on this topic. I understand at least why Bernie does those things, why he coalesces to the sort of mainstream Democratic view on things like Russia, on things like, Joe Biden is my friend, etc. There are enough people in this country who will vote in the Democratic primary who are, for lack of a better phrase, irreversibly propagandized by mainstream press. That if he were to come out and say, hey, the CIA told me without any evidence that Russia is propping up my campaign. Hey, CIA, why don't you stop interfering in elections? Or, hey, you know what, Joe Biden, I shouldn't call him my friend because he does all of these horrible things. Then you just give ammo to the MSNBC crowd to be like, see, he's the mean guy that we always said he was. So I have always viewed it as a political move. I don't particularly care for it, but I don't know that the assessment that he would have done better electorally is necessarily accurate. But I
don't, like I said, I don't know if he did better electorally, but I do know that the coalitions he could have built would have been larger, which in my opinion would have given him an advantage. Whereas I can't say whether he would have for a fact done better electorally, but what I can say is he would have had the advantage. Because at the end of the day, does he not get smeared regardless? He has zero control over the narrative being put on MSNBC and CNN. Zero. He disavowed over and over again, to his detriment, in my opinion, his supporters, even though his supporters are not nearly as mean or as hateful, the real ones. They're not nearly as mean or as hateful to the other candidates as they're portraying. Warren got fucking kid gloves. She got kid gloves by many of his supporters the entire election, and even she had the nerve to go out and say, "What? Oh, it's Bernie's fault." And this is a person who she had a surrogate on TYT who was racist as hell and homophobic. Like, it was the most bizarre thing I've ever. And this is a person who was on TYT like every other day for a half a year representing Warren's campaign, and nobody said anything about it. But when he doesn't have any control over that narrative. But what you can do is be a goddamn politician. You don't have to say, I don't trust CIAs. No, it's like, listen, this is what I was briefed on. However, until we see more proof, more evidence, we're going to continue keeping on, and pushing our message of blah, 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 fighting for Medicare fraud, et cetera, et cetera. That's it. Oh, do you believe what you don't think Russia? I didn't say I didn't think that. I said we need more proof before I demonize either demonize or abdicate. Either way, we need more proof, because eventually I'm going to have to be the president of the United States, and I'm going to have to work with all these countries to bring peace to not only the United States but around the world. That's all you have to do. It's that simple. It really is.
I think that is completely accurate. My issue is when you've got folks that have been propagandized by the Rachel Maddow Russiagate nonsense for the last 3 years, it is very hard to make that case to those people.
But that case that I just made, you don't delegitimize their fears. You say, hey, we need more proof. And until we get that proof, we're gonna keep pressing. So we're not denying it, but we would like to see more proof before we, give a full statement on it, condemning anybody. But instead, without proof, he goes on to say that Putin's the worst person in the world. You have to remember, there have been a lot of people that have been quote unquote propagandized by Rachel Maddow. You have to wonder, honestly, how many of them would even vote for Bernie to begin with? So that's a legitimate question.
And then two, that is a good point.
And then two, you have to wonder if, and I'll let you finish, wrap this up, Kit. But two, you have to wonder, does the statistics even match up? Because if after the Russiagate probe, Trump's his approval rating went up, then after the impeachment, which Russia was somehow brought in a lot, goes up to 49%, which is higher than what Obama's was in 2012 when he took re-election around the same time. So you have to wonder, is the statistics, are the numbers even supporting that notion? Because I've been to rallies, I've been to these town halls, and no one even cares about Russiagate. Nobody cares. So being political to tiptoe around it, and he's not lying, but it's a way to go about it, in my humble opinion, that if he had good advisors, 'cause I don't think it's all his fault, but I think he doesn't have the right advisors helping him in that regard. So I'll let you wrap it up, Kit. What's your opinion?
So here's the thing: fighting for a better future, and I always say this at the end of every episode or interview, is not going to be easy. But we all should do what we can. But this entire system that we have is corrupt to the core, and people need to keep pushing forward. For all the other continual primary elections that are going to happen, turn out to vote, stay in line, and know the rules and regulations of your state's primary laws, and know your rights as a voter. But in order for there to be change, it's going to require active involvement. And people need to get it in their minds that your vote does matter. The system is corrupt. Corporate media is falling down, and independent media must step up. And activists, political outsiders need to step up their game and continue fighting, no matter how many times you lose. Bernie Sanders is going to have to also lead this narrative too, because no matter what he does, same thing for Tulsi, no matter what she does, the media doesn't like him. The establishment doesn't like them. That's fine. Rally people around that fact and show them the hypocrisy of neoliberalism, neoconservatism, and corporate media. We have a system that works for the top 1%, and people have to get mad. People have to get angry. People have to step up. If we don't step up now, we just say, well, that's it, it's all over. No, we go out fighting. We go out making sure our presence is seen. I don't believe that this is over. Now, do I want to see more pushback from Sanders and Tulsi? Yeah, absolutely. I want them to call it out. But that's where we step in. That's where all of us, our supporters, step in. Because it's always been us, and we have to take the system back. And that means working with people even outside our bubble, including Republicans, Libertarians, Greens, Socialists, non-voters. We have to unite together, because this system will not work for us. And I believe I think everyone else believes in that too. We just got to push forward. But we got to get it through our heads that this will not be easy.
That's very, very true. It's not going to be easy, and I think that's kind of what scares some people. But the reality of the situation is you're not alone, and I think that's what needs to be understood. You're not alone in this fight, and the coalitions built here, to be honest with you, have built relationships even in my life that are going to last a lifetime. The kind of relationships that you want. You're going to be surrounded by fighters, people who are not going to give up, people who are not going to quit, and everybody needs people like that in your life. So yeah, it isn't going to be easy, but life is not easy in general. But I guarantee you this: unless this political process gets fixed, unless we start fixing some of the structural issues, not only in politics, but in our economics and in our foreign policy, your life's going to be much, much harder. Then you're going to want to wish you fix. You know what I'm saying? Like you don't get your oil change, you fuck up your engine. That's what's going to happen if you don't start addressing this like yesterday. We would have had Medicare. Go ahead.
Said, don't be that person who says that he wished they could have helped.
That's very true, 100%. So before I leave, I want to say this. 28% of Americans, this is as of December 2019, 28% of Americans identify themselves as Democrat. 28% identify themselves as Republican. 41% of the country identifies as independent. So you're going after the wrong vote if you think that pandering to Democrats is the way to win the White House in 2020. So with that being said, everybody, thank you all so much for tuning into this live stream interview. Thank you, Kit and Paul, and to the Heartlands Media team for being our eyes on the ground out there in Chicago. It's much appreciated. We greatly appreciate your contributions, not only to the indie media movement, but to the election integrity movement and to just the progressive politics in general. We really appreciate you. Other than that, ladies and gentlemen, always remember, more than anything else, find your balance. Peace.
All right.